Hey, I'm Tommy Boshers. Thanks for watching. If you want to stay connected for more Detroit Muscle, just click the subscribe button. Today on Detroit Muscle, our Caddy Hearse gets an exhaust that will wake the dead.
Plus, we add cooling and fuel systems to keep our 500 Caddy engine running right.
Then top it all off with some boost juice to take Overtaker to horsepower heaven. I do believe that green paint is a little brighter than the cap.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't match the car at all, but that's what makes it cool. It looks like a crate engine, and it's not. This is the same boat anchor that Tommy pulled out of this thing a while back, and then we upgraded it. Ported heads, cam, intake, and that's gonna add quite a bit of power, but that's not gonna double the power like we wanna do. We're actually going for over 500 horse with this thing.
Now, to ensure that big number, well, we're gonna be spraying this thing with about 150, maybe a 200 shot.
Maybe 300.
Well, either way, to get this thing to make that kind of power, we also have to address the other systems on this thing. And one of them would be the exhaust.
Right, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the headers.
Now, with the exhaust on this car, it isn't gonna be just some old twin stick sticking out the back with your pawpaw tips. It's gonna be a little bit different. It's gonna add some style and possibly even allow us to burp some fire.
Well, you'd think it'd be kind of difficult to find a set of headers for a 1975 Cadillac Hearse, but Summit Racing had exactly what we needed with these headers by Sanderson. These are mid-length, so they're going to lend themselves to what Tommy has planned for the rest of the exhaust system, but other than that, they've got a lot of other benefits. They're going to free up power over those factory exhaust manifolds. They're lighter weight, and they've got 1 7/8 primaries, 3-inch collectors, and a nice ceramic coating. We've got plenty of room to get these things on here. We just need to get them bolted on, and we can move on to the rest of that system. It's not uncommon to fight with a set of headers during install, but working with big bodies, they fall right into place.
Now, it's easy to say that our old Cadillac Hearse makes quite a statement. I want to do the same thing with our exhaust, so today I'm going to be fabbing up some side pipe mufflers. Now, we picked up all this stuff from Magnaflow, and they offer several components, you know, in their Builder series. The first thing that we need to do to get started is do a bit of measuring on the car. Here, we're trying to get this thing as close as possible to the front side of the rocker near the wheel. With a couple of bends and some tack welds, we hit the sweet spot. Well, I got my lead pipe on my exhaust basically where I want it. Now the next thing I need to do is throw up that big old pipe and then the inlet tube to it to see exactly where we're at. I'm probably gonna have to do some trimming, just no big deal. Our main tube is 4 inches and our inner is 3. Yeah, we're gonna have to cut that off. I like the height right there though. That transition doesn't bother me. Need to do some marking. The tube coming off our header is 2.5 inches, so I fabbed up an adapter to connect it to our 90. Now back here on the rear, it's a little bit more of aesthetics than I would call function, because basically the exhaust is going to come out of this thing and it's going to be in the direction that you point it. Now normally people mount a tip kind of at a horizontal, or they kick them down a bit, and y'all have probably seen that kick up some dust. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn it up and then cut it out in kind of a C shape, and that'll give it a bit more of a monster feel to it. Then after I draw that out, we're gonna remove this thing, get over to the table, and then we can build the innards. Now this next step is going to convert our side pipe in a bit more of a muffler direction. And what we're going to be doing is adding these baffles that we got. Now what I need is 87 5/8 from this tab to that little mark right there. So we're going to have to weld a couple of these tubes together. That's no big deal. All right, that'll work. That's good enough. We'll slide on these stamped rings that will help locate and support our baffle tube. Once it's all tacked up, we can slide our baffle inside our exhaust tube and tap her in. Body saw makes light work of carving up our custom tip, and we'll smooth out the edges. Small amount of massaging and burning in some wire, and we're almost to the finish line. Now we just need to fab up some hangers to keep these side pipes in place. Don't have to get too elaborate here. We're just using some flat stock with a few cuts. Drill a hole, an isolator, a little bit of welding, bolt it in.
Wow, that wasn't what I expected, but I like it.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
That is the biggest muffler I think I've ever seen.
Well, the wheelbase had a whole lot to do with that.
It's gonna be loud?
Oh, brother, it's probably gonna be plenty loud.
We ditched the mechanical fan for an electric one to save horsepower and keep our engine running cool. We're plugging away on our Cadillac Hearse that we're calling Overtaker, and we're trying to make this thing scream down the drag strip. Now, when you're talking about making a car quicker, there's a couple of things you can do, say low-hanging fruit, to do that. One would be shed weight, and the other is going to be to free up horsepower. And we're doing both here under the hood on our Caddy. One thing we've done is completely eliminated the AC compressor. That's the original one. It was big and heavy. That, along with the condenser, it's about 40 pounds that we saved. And when you're talking about shedding weight, a pound or two here and there is good. 40, well, that's pretty significant. Another thing we've done is eliminated that manual fan. This is a 500 cubic inch engine from the factory, big heavy car. There's a lot of strain on that cooling system, so that required a big fan that had a lot of drag to it, and that sucked power from the engine, maybe 10 or 15 horsepower, so we got rid of that. The next thing we're gonna do is fill this big void here, and that's gonna be yet another way for us to save some weight. Well, you probably could have guessed we were doing an aluminum radiator swap, but why is this such a popular upgrade? Well, when you take a look at this factory radiator that came out of our Cadillac, there's a lot to be desired here. This is a copper and brass style. It's got copper tubes and fins with brass tanks. It is leaking, but that's not the only drawback to this. These are super heavy and they're expensive to repair and even more expensive to replace. So if you were doing a chalk mark style restoration on an old Caddy or any other old car, you might want to keep this. But other than that, you've got aftermarket radiators that are readily available. As a matter of fact, we got this aluminum one from rockauto.com. It's a lot lighter and it's even thinner. When you talk about the design, radiators have increased in efficiency over the years. This is a single core at 1.25 inches thick, just as efficient as that original radiator, which is a 3-core at 2 inches thick. Now we talk about weight savings. The original one was almost 30 pounds. The new aluminum, 10 pounds. So we've got almost a 20-pound savings. Well, because we eliminated that mechanical fan, we had to replace it with some electric ones. Now, there's not a lot of aftermarket support for these old Caddies, so we had to go with something universal, and we got this kit from Frostbite. Just need to get it mounted to the radiator, get it wired up. We're gonna hold this in place with a panel clamp, and we're just gonna mount it using some regular tech screws and washers. All right, time for some hoses. When we were on rockauto.com ordering that radiator, we got these OEM replacement hoses as well. You just need to add some water and a cap, and that's good to go. Now, when you're doing an electric fan conversion like we did, you want to make sure that your alternator is going to handle it. Now, maybe just be that this is a Hearse or all Cadillacs had it. This is a big enough alternator to handle that. We just need to put a relay in there to run those fans, which we'll do after we install the fuel system, and that's next.
We'll tuck our tank in Overtaker, adding an upgraded fuel system. Well, I guess you could say we're about 6 feet deep with our makeover on our old Cadillac. And the next thing we're gonna dig into is the fuel system. We did a little bit of some detective work and we realized that the factory tank that was up under this car had some corrosion in it. So the next thing we're gonna have to do is swap in a fuel cell. That's the best solution we've got.
So you're gonna just like throw it in there and mount it with those little, what do you call those?
Anchors? Yeah, it would be a killer idea, but we need, you know, to be a bit more safe.
Okay, so where do we need to start?
Well, I know after looking under the car, there's a big gnarly brace that runs across the back side here. So we're gonna have to move forward, cut a big square hole, and I wanna recess the tank so it's nice and flush. Kind of looks like it belongs.
I like it. What do you want me to do?
Get out of the way. I'm gonna get to tearing.
No problem.
Need a screwdriver. Don't really know what to call these things, but we'll start by taking out the gasket clamp plates and rollers. That brace I mentioned earlier is 19 inches from the bumper in toward the car, so that's why I made my mark. I'm gonna have to measure from left to right to find center, and then I'm gonna cut me a hole that's 18 1/4 by 16 3/4. Think. Now, if everything's square, these two lines are gonna match up. Close enough we can cut it. Well, that's the first hole through the top floor. Now we got to make another cut on the second floor. It's no big deal. We'll use a plumb bob on all 4 corners, draw a couple lines, make a couple cuts. Not really supposed to climb in the back of a hearse, but once. This is for, you know, good times. Now, if everything goes right, this little tank here should fall right into place. Oh yeah. Now, I still got a few things to do. I need to remove these bolts so that I can anchor it to the floor. I need to make a plate to cover up from where them rollers were. And also, I gotta execute my plumbing. Now, with this tank, the cap doesn't breathe, and this port here is how this thing is gonna let the air in and out. So, I'm gonna run this outside of the car. That way, whenever you're sitting in here, you won't be smelling fuel.
Well, while Tommy's getting the fuel cell mounted, I'm tackling the rest of the fuel system, including the carburetor here. It's an 850 CFM Holley Street HP with mechanical secondaries, and it's going to be plenty for what our Cadillac 500 will need. Now, I didn't mount it permanently yet because we've got some spice we're going to sprinkle on there a little bit later. As for the rest of the fuel system, we're using what's here on the table. It's pretty straightforward. We've got a pickup, we've got a fuel pump and regulator assembly, post filter, and all the hose to get it connected. I'm going to take these to the back, get them installed. And we'll see how this turned out.
What do you think?
Wow.
Even you can do things when you apply yourself.
I like it.
Yeah, it don't look too bad.
Yeah, no, I'm all for it. And you know, I got to thinking about you were going to gut all of this out of here to say, wait, what happened with that?
You talked me into it.
Smart man.
Let me get out of your way. I'm gonna grab me a snack. You got any change?
For our pickup, we're using Holley's Hydramat. This stuff helps prevent pump starvation during fuel slosh, and it also acts as a 100 micron pre-filter for your pump. All right, now we just need to get this thing in the air and get that pump mounted. All right, when you're mounting a fuel pump like the one we're going with, you want to make sure of a few things. One, you want to make sure it's close to the tank because these pumps like to push and not pull. On that note, you want to make sure also that it's not mounted above the tank because then it's going to have to draw the fuel out and it doesn't like doing that. Another thing, you want to make sure you're away from any moving parts like suspension. We're plenty clear from our leaf spring here. And then also the exhaust, which with our new side pipes, we don't have to worry about back here. So we found the perfect spot here. Got the bracket in place. I just need to mount the pump to it, get it plumbed up. We're using this QuickFuel Technologies 175. And it's a pump and regulator combo, and it'll support 175 gallons per hour. Well, with the pump mounted, it's time to move on to the hoses, and what we decided to go with is this Earl Super Stock. It's a little different than what you normally see us use. This is actually a push-on hose that makes installation nice and easy, and it'll handle up to 250 PSI. And it's that quick and simple. All I need to do is get these hoses made, get the fuel lines run to the front of the car, we'll have ourselves a fuel system. We have one more surprise to give Overtaker a lethal injection. Well, exhaust system is complete. Cooling system, that's done too. And the fuel system, we just have one more termination to make, but we're not gonna do that just yet because we've got something special up our sleeves.
This next upgrade that we're gonna be doing is basically bolting on 150 horse plus or minus.
Maybe like 300 horse, I'm hoping. What we're talking about is a power adder.
Now, normally power adders come in 3 different categories, and the first one I'm going to talk about is kind of my favorite, and it's mainly because it looks so cool. Blowers, huffers, or whatever you want to call them have the goods. Plus, these big hunks of aluminum make power. Doesn't really matter if they're on an old school big block or late model muscle. Oh, and they make some impressive sound.
Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the whine of a blower, but when it comes to cool noises, my absolute favorite has to be the whistle of a turbo. Turbochargers are a great way to add plenty of cool factor to just about any hot rod or muscle car. You'll find them as singles or twins, and since they're driven off the exhaust, you can mount them just about anywhere. And you know these things mean business since they have to have their own horsepower relief valve.
Both of those have their benefits, but they can be pricey and kind of complicated to install. For us, working on that obscure Cadillac, we knew it'd be difficult finding an application for a 500 Cadillac, plus we wanted our dollars to make sense. So our plan of attack is to be spraying this thing with some nitrous. It doesn't take but a couple of hours to install, plus it's economical. Don't forget that allure of power at the push of a button. Come here, baby. Oh yeah.
On a wet nitrous system, the nitrous, or N2O, and fuel are injected into the engine by way of solenoids and regulated by orifices, or jets. The precise amount of fuel and nitrous enter the combustion chamber, causing a more dense air-fuel mixture. That mixture gets ignited, creating greater cylinder pressure and ultimately more horsepower. This particular kit we're using is called a plate system that we got from NOS. It sandwiches between your carburetor and your intake manifold. With the plate in place, the carburetor can sit on top of it and get bolted down. Well, here's why we didn't terminate the fuel feed earlier. We've got to tee into the fuel line because one line has to go to the fuel solenoid of the nitrous system and the other line has to feed the carburetor. Once we figured out the best routing, we just need to get these lines cut, installed, and clamped down tight. Well, that's it for the fuel feed. Now we just need to get some switches installed, get it wired up, and run the nitrous feed, which you really don't want to do till Tommy figures out where he's going to mount the bottle.
To mount a nitrous bottle, it's really basic. It comes with some brackets. You got to make a couple of holes, and you want to make sure that you mount it onto a solid foundation. We're going to put ours here on the floor. Now, we could try to hide this thing a little bit, but what's the point in that? Look at this car. You know, Mark, I wonder how many people in this world has put a nitrous setup on a hearse.
Probably very few.
Probably wouldn't hurt if there were a few more out there. I got my end finished up. What about you?
Yeah, I got it connected. Now, I've got this purge solenoid all plumbed up with the little rabbit ears there, so don't mind that. We'll fix it up later when we get the hood on it and come up with something fancy. All right, so I guess all that's left now is just to push the button. Go ahead. Make sure it ain't gonna leak.
There you go. Dude, that looks pretty cool on this end.
That was awesome.
Now, we only got brakes, suspension, wheels and tires, maybe a couple other things. Man, we'll be out breathing fire and disturbing the peace in this old thing.
I can't wait. Well, for more information on what you saw on the show today, be sure to go to PowerNationTV.com. Call that mission accomplished.
Yeah, we should go celebrate.
You buying the first round?
No, I'll let you